I never thought it would come to this, but here we are. My name is Alex and I have a sister named Lisa. Growing up, we were always close. We supported each other through thick and thin, but that relationship started to fray over the years. Lisa made some questionable decisions, especially when it came to money, and I always ended up helping her out. A few months ago she was struggling. Her rent was overdue, her credit cards were maxed out, and the car she had been driving was on its last legs. I could see the stress on her face, and though she hated asking for help, it was obvious she had no other choice. So, like always, I stepped in. I paid her rent for the next few months, thinking that would give her some breathing room to get her finances back in order. But that wasn't enough. A week later, she called me again, saying she needed help paying off some debts or she'd be facing serious consequences. I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money, hoping it would finally be the end of the cycle. But it wasn't. Then came the car. Hers was beyond repair, and instead of pushing her to get a new one, I decided to let her borrow mine. It wasn't an ideal solution, but I figured that would help her get around without constantly borrowing rides. I trusted her to be responsible, maybe too much. A few days later I got the call. The kind of call you never want to get. Lisa had crashed my car. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she was exaggerating or there was some misunderstanding. But no. She had totaled it, slammed into a tree while trying to rush to work in the rain, going a little too fast. The car, which I had saved for months to buy, was completely wrecked. The airbags had deployed, the front end was smashed in, and it was unrecognizable. I was devastated, not just because of the car but because of how irresponsible she had been. I had given her so much, trusted her with everything, and she had let me down in the worst way possible. She was sorry, of course, but that didn't change the fact that I was left dealing with the mess. I had paid for her rent, wiped away her debt, and now I had to figure out what to do with the wreckage of my car. When I confronted her, all she could say was that she didn't know what had gone wrong. She didn't seem to fully grasp the consequences of her actions. It was like I was living in some sort of nightmare where I had done everything I could for her, and she kept throwing it all back in my face. The worst part was that I wasn't even mad at her, at least not in the way I should have been. I was just heartbroken. The trust one had placed in her was shattered, and I didn't know how to rebuild it. My sister had become someone I barely recognized. I wanted to help her, but I wasn't sure if I could anymore. Days passed and the frustration only grew. Lisa's apology felt hollow, like she was just saying the words because she knew they were expected. Every time I looked at the wreckage of my car, I felt a pang of regret. I kept thinking about all the sacrifices I'd made for her, how I had tried to fix everything, make her life easier, only to be met with one disaster after another. I told her that I was going to take the car to the insurance company, but the reality of the situation hit me hard. The car was a total loss, and even though she was my sister, the truth was that I wasn't in a position to keep rescuing her from the mess she had created. That car had meant more to me than just a mode of transportation. It was a symbol of how hard I'd worked, the sacrifices I'd made, the goals I had achieved on my own. And now it was gone. I had a long talk with Lisa, sitting across from her in the living room. I told her I loved her, but I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep giving and giving without seeing any real change. It was hard to say the words, but I had to draw a line. I told her that if she wanted to keep borrowing from me, I needed to see some real effort on her part to take responsibility for her life. There were tears, of course. She promised she'd do better, that this would be a wake-up call for her. But deep down I was skeptical. How many times had I heard that before? How many times had I let myself believe that this time, things would be different? I gave her one last chance to prove herself. I said that I wouldn't help her financially again unless she showed me she was taking steps to fix her life. I didn't know if she could do it, but I had to at least hope. After everything, I wanted to believe in her again, even though part of me was afraid she would let me down once more. A few weeks passed and the silence between us was deafening. I didn't hear from her unless it was to ask for something. I'd get a text asking for money or a favor, and each time it stung. I started to realize that maybe I had been enabling her, giving her a crutch instead of letting her stand on her own. It hurt to admit, but I knew I had to let her fall, to let her face the consequences of her own actions, even if it meant she would hate me for it. Eventually, she started reaching out less, and I wondered if it was because she had finally realized that things weren't going to be handed to her anymore. I didn't want to be the villain in this story, but I had to be. It wasn't about the money or the car anymore. It was about showing her that her actions had real consequences, and that maybe, just maybe, it was time for her to take responsibility for her own life. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but for the first time in a long time, I was starting to feel like I was doing the right thing. I had always been the fixer, the one who swooped in to save the day. But maybe it was time for me to let go. Weeks turned into months and the tension between Lisa and I remained. I had stuck to my word. I didn't help her when she asked for money, and I didn't offer any more favors. The silence was thick, and for a while, it felt like I had lost her. She stopped calling, stopped texting me as often, and I couldn't tell if she was angry or just processing everything. I had no idea what was going on in her life, and in some ways I was okay with that. I needed to focus on my own life, my own goals, and start healing from the mess we'd both been living in. Then one night she showed up on my doorstep. She looked different, more mature, maybe even a little humbled. I was surprised to see her, but I didn't want to act like I had been waiting for this moment. I had no idea what to expect. "Alex," she said softly, her voice trembling. I'm sorry for everything." I invited her in and we sat down at the kitchen table. It was the first real conversation we'd had. She admitted that the crash had been a wake-up call, one that finally forced her to face the reality of her life. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say at first. I had expected more excuses, more blaming the world for her problems, but instead she was taking responsibility. It was a small step, but it was a step. She told me that losing my trust had been the hardest thing for her, and that she realized how much I had done for her over the years. She had taken me for granted and she was sorry for that. "I know I've messed up, Alex, but I'm working on it. I want to fix things, starting with you," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. It wasn't an easy conversation. I was still hurt, still unsure of how to move forward. But I listened. For the first time in a long time, I listened without judgment, without holding on to my anger. I realized that maybe this was the turning point we both needed. I had been so focused on what she had done to me that I had forgotten how much she was struggling to find herself. "I don't know if things will ever be the same," I told her quietly. "But I'm proud of you for taking the first step. Just know that I can't keep fixing things for you. You have to keep working for it, Lisa. You can't expect me to carry you anymore." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. And I don't want you to. I want to show you that I can do better, that I can be better." That night, we didn't come to any grand resolution. We didn't magically fix everything, but it felt like a start. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Lisa was finally starting to realize the consequences of her actions. Maybe she was finally growing up. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I know that I've done all I can. It's no longer about me giving and giving, it's about her standing on her own 2 feet. And if she continues on this path, maybe, just maybe, our relationship can heal. But for now I'm letting go. Letting her find her own way, and learning to trust that she'll get there on her own. The road might be long and it might still have some bumps along the way, but I believe she's ready to walk it. Months passed and the change in Lisa was undeniable, though not without its setbacks. She had a long road ahead and I could tell that there were days when she wanted to fall back into old patterns. But she didn't. She stuck to her therapy sessions, kept her job, and slowly started to rebuild her life. It was hard for me to fully trust her again, I won't lie about that, but I could see the effort and for once, it felt genuine. One day she called me to ask if we could meet up. I agreed, though my nerves were on edge. Was she going to ask for something? Was this another one of her half-hearted attempts at reconciliation? When I arrived at the cafe, Lisa was already sitting at a corner booth, a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. She looked different again, not in a way that screamed dramatic change, but in the way that someone who's finally starting to own their life looks. She was calmer, more grounded. "Hey," she greeted me with a soft smile. I sat down, trying to read her expression. "Hey, what's going on?" She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About what happened with the car, with the rent, with you helping me. I know I can never repay you for everything you did for me, but I want to at least try." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" Lisa slid a small envelope across the table toward me. My stomach dropped. My first instinct was to refuse it, to tell her I didn't need anything. But then she spoke again, her voice calm but determined. "I've been saving. A little bit from my paycheck each week. I know it's not much, but I want to start paying you back. I know I can't make up for everything, but I need you to know that I'm trying. I want to make it right." I stared at the envelope. My heart felt like it had stopped beating for a second. It wasn't just about the money, though that part was nice, it was about the fact that Lisa had thought this through. She wasn't just apologizing or saying the right words. She was showing me that she was taking responsibility in a way I hadn't expected. It was a symbol of her growth, of her determination to change. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside there was a check, a small one, but it was a start. It wasn't even about the amount, it was about the fact that she had taken the initiative, that she was doing something without being asked. "You don't have to do this," I said quietly, looking up at her. "I know I don't have to," she replied. "But I want to. It's the least I can do." For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. There was no sudden burst of relief, no grand moment of closure. But there was a shift, a small one perhaps, but enough for me to feel like I had done the right thing in giving her space to grow. I folded the check and slid it back into the envelope. "You keep it. Keep saving, keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you, Lisa." She blinked, surprised. "You're not angry?" "No," I said with a quiet smile. "I'm not angry anymore." She let out a relieved sigh, and for the first time in a long time, I saw my sister as someone who wasn't just my responsibility but as an adult who was finally beginning to take charge of her own life. I realized that letting go wasn't about abandoning her, it was about giving her the chance to stand up on her own, even if it meant I had to step back. We sat there for a while longer just talking. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but it felt like the beginning of something. We didn't need to fix everything overnight. Sometimes the biggest step forward is simply showing up, doing the work, and showing that you're willing to keep going even when the past is still there, lingering in the background. I don't know what the future holds for us. There are still challenges ahead. But for the first time, I feel like Lisa and I are on the same path. I've let go of the need to fix her, and she's slowly taking responsibility for her own life. Maybe, just maybe, we're both learning to be the people we were always meant to be. And that's enough for now. It's been a few more months since that day at the cafe, and the changes in Lisa have only grown more evident. It's like she's shedding a skin she didn't even realize she was wearing. We still have our ups and downs, and I still don't trust her completely, but the foundation is there now, a real, solid foundation of effort, not just words. She's working hard, staying steady with her therapy, and even looking into courses to improve her skills for a better job. I can see the ambition in her eyes now, something that I hadn't seen in years. I won't say it's been but I've learned to listen, to guide her when she asks, and to stay quiet when it's clear she needs to figure it out herself. Sometimes that's the hardest part, holding back when you want to swoop in and fix everything for her. But I'm learning just like she is. The thing that surprised me most was when she came over to my apartment a few weeks ago, with a box in hand. I had no idea what it was. She looked nervous, like she was about to do something big, and I was half expecting her to say something like, "I've made a huge mistake," or, "Can you help me with this?" But instead, she handed me the box and said, "I think it's time for me to give you something back." Inside the box was the spare key to my car, the one she had wrecked. It was a simple thing, but it hit me like a freight train. My first instinct was to refuse it. To say, "You don't need to give me this. I've already forgiven you." But I could see in her face that this wasn't about the key. It was about her taking ownership of something. It was about her finally understanding that she could be accountable, not just for her mistakes, but for her actions moving forward. "I saved up to get it repaired," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know it doesn't change what happened, but I wanted to do this for you. I wanted you to know that I'm taking responsibility." For a moment I was silent, trying to process everything. The wrecked car, the debts, the broken trust, it had all felt like so much weight for so long. But here she was, trying to make it right in the best way she knew how. "You don't have to do this," I said, though the words felt different now. I wasn't refusing her. I was acknowledging that the gesture wasn't just about paying me back. It was about showing me that she was capable of owning up to her mistakes, even when it hurt. "I want to," she replied softly. "I really do." I took the key from her, not because I needed it, but because I knew this was her way of saying she had finally started to heal. She was learning how to stand on her own, how to be the person I had always hoped she would be. I hugged her then, tightly, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to fix everything. I felt like she was fixing herself, and that was enough. We didn't need to talk about the car anymore, or the money, or any of the past mistakes. It was like a quiet understanding between us. I had helped her, yes, but now it was her turn to carry the lessons with her. I didn't need her to repay me, I just needed her to keep going, to keep improving, and to live her life in a way that didn't depend on me. And she was doing it. Slowly but surely, Lisa was becoming someone who could stand on her own, and that felt like more than enough. The road ahead might still have its bumps, but for the first time I believe we're both on the right track. I'm no longer the fixer, and she's no longer the one who needs fixing. We're just two people trying to make it through this messy, complicated life, and that, I think, is exactly where we both need to be. A few more months have passed since that day with the key, and the distance between Lisa and me has felt a lot more comfortable, less like a rope pulling us in different directions. There are still challenges, of course. Life isn't a neat, perfect little bow no matter how much we wish it could be. But the moments of strain don't feel as heavy anymore. They feel more like ordinary obstacles, things we both know we can face and move through, rather than impossible mountains. Lisa's been doing well at her new job, and I can see the pride she takes in her work now. She's moved into a small apartment that she's actually been able to pay for herself. No help from me this time. And when she calls to talk about her new place, she sounds genuinely happy. I can hear it in her voice when she says, "I'm getting better at this. I feel like I'm finally getting it together." She doesn't need my validation anymore, but I give it to her anyway. "You've come a long way, Lisa. I'm proud of you." And I mean it. There are still moments when she slips, small things like an overdue bill or a reminder to take care of something, but they don't feel like the same old patterns. They feel like something she can actually handle, something she's learning to navigate on her own. Not long ago, she invited me to her apartment for dinner. I hesitated at first, wondering if it would be awkward, if she was still the same person she was when she needed me to fix everything. But when I walked into her place, I was surprised. It was cozy, neat, and she had cooked an entire meal. It wasn't five-star cuisine, but it was real, homemade pasta, a salad she'd probably spent way too much time preparing, and a bottle of wine. We ate together, just the two of us, and I couldn't help but notice how different it felt. There was no tension between us, no resentment or frustration like there had been before. She was calm, happy, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was sitting across from the person I had always hoped she could be. We talked about everything and nothing, how work was going, how her new friends were treating her, how I had finally gotten my act together enough to start taking vacations for the first time in years. I laughed at a few of her awkward stories from her first few weeks at work, and she teased me about how I was the worst cook in history. She wasn't wrong. It wasn't just a casual dinner, it was like we were building something new together, something rooted in mutual respect and trust. And then, toward the end of the night, Lisa handed me a small box. I didn't expect anything, so I looked at her with a confused smile. "What's this?" I asked. "Just something I've been working on," she said, her eyes a little shy. I opened the box slowly. Inside was a framed picture of the two of us when we were kids. One of those rare moments when we were both genuinely happy before life got complicated. It was a photo I hadn't seen in years. I couldn't help but smile as I looked at it. "You kept this?" I asked softly. I kept it because I remembered what it felt like before everything went wrong. Before we were just stuck. She paused for a moment and I could see the vulnerability in her eyes. "And I wanted to remind you that we can get back to something like that. Maybe not exactly the same, but something close. We've come a long way and I wanted to show you how far I've come." I looked at the picture for a long time, feeling a sense of warmth settle in my chest. It wasn't perfect. Our relationship would never go back to being exactly like it was when we were kids. But that wasn't the point. The point was that we had both learned and grown, that we had fought through the mess, and that there was still room for us to rebuild, slowly, carefully, and with understanding. "I think we're getting there," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lisa nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, we are." We finished our dinner and it felt like something shifted between us. There was no need to talk about the past anymore. We both knew the work we'd done, the pain we'd endured, and the healing that had happened. Sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, but always steadily. We were no longer the same people who had stumbled through the years with unfinished business hanging over our heads. We were two people who had finally taken responsibility for our own lives and were moving forward. The future was still uncertain and I knew there would be bumps in the road. But for the first time, I wasn't worried about whether we could handle them. I knew we could. Together but independently. And that, for now, felt like the most beautiful thing we could have. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what was to come, both for Lisa and for me. The months continued to pass, and as time went on, the relationship between Lisa and me felt less like a series of repairs and more like the foundation of something that could truly last. There were no more big apologies, no more grand gestures. The work we'd both put in had started to show in the small, everyday moments, the ones that mattered more than any grand proclamation ever could. I started to realize that this whole process wasn't just about Lisa changing, it was about me too. I had to let go of the expectations I'd carried for so long. I had to learn that love wasn't about fixing someone else. It was about supporting them as they figured things out on their own. And sometimes that meant stepping back and letting them fail, and other times, it meant standing beside them when they needed help picking up the pieces. Lisa, for her part, had become someone I could admire, not because she was perfect, but because she had taken ownership of her mistakes and had worked to make herself better. She wasn't the same person who used to expect handouts or make excuses for her behavior. She was independent, focused, and responsible, and she had earned that through hard work and dedication. A year after that dinner at her apartment, Lisa called me one afternoon, her voice lighter than I'd ever heard it before. "Hey Alex, I've been thinking. I want to take you somewhere." "Where?" I asked, intrigued. "You'll see," she said with a smile in her voice. A few days later, she showed up at my door with the same excitement I hadn't seen since we were kids. She led me to the car, her own now, not mine, not the wrecked one, but her very own vehicle that she had bought with her own money. She was glowing as we drove out of the city, heading to a small park she had found on the outskirts. When we arrived, she took me to a small, quiet spot near the water. There was something about it, something serene. I sat down on the grass, and Lisa sat next to me, taking a deep breath as if she was gathering the courage for something important. "I just wanted to show you this place," she said softly, "because it's mine. It's where I come when I need to remember how far I've come. And I want to share it with you. It feels like a symbol of everything I've worked for, and I wanted you to see it with me." For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to do anything. I didn't have to fix her or give advice. I didn't have to make her feel better about the past. All I had to do was sit there beside her, in this peaceful moment, and appreciate the space she had created for herself, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We didn't need words to understand what was happening. The silence between us was full of years of growth, lessons learned, and struggles shared. And in that moment, I realized that this was what I had been working toward all along, not to save her, but to let her save herself, and to learn how to be there for each other without any expectation of perfection. "I'm really proud of you, Lisa," I said, my voice steady but full of emotion. "I hope you know that." She smiled, her eyes soft and full of gratitude. "I know. And I'm proud of you too. For everything you've done, for being there, for letting me grow. I don't know if I could have done it without you." I didn't know if that was true, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that we were both here, in this moment, finally at peace with each other. The past was no longer a burden. The car wreck, the debts, the years of uncertainty, they were behind us. We had both moved forward, and now we could look back only to appreciate how far we had come. And so, we sat there, watching the water ripple in the quiet park, with the weight of the past lifted, and the promise of the future ahead of us. The journey wasn't over, but we had both learned how to walk it side by side in a way that felt right. It was the kind of peace I had always hoped for. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that no matter what came next, I had finally found the balance between helping my sister and letting her be the person she was meant to become.